Hi, I'm Brittany Lorden. I'm an occupational therapist at Levine Cancer at Advocate Healthcare. Today we will be discussing Mobility Matters, assisting loved ones with movement and daily activities. So our objectives today are to identify fall hazards and fall risks, to understand how to safely assist with transfers and mobility, and to verbalize adaptive strategies for performance and daily activities. So first, we need to understand what causes falls. So some are listed here on this slide. So muscle weakness could potentially cause a fall. Balance deficits can as well. Side effects from medications, visual impairments, environmental hazards, and cognitive decline. So how do we reduce falls? So potentially by doing some exercise and strengthening to help with those physical deficits. We can also modify the environment, such as removing throw rugs, decluttering, basically making sure that the pathways are clear for safe mobility. Also improving lighting and contrast so that your loved ones can see and that will also help to reduce fall risks. Potentially even making sure we're using, proper footwear as well. And any use of grab bars or non-slip mats or railings could also potentially help to modify the environment to decrease fall risks. Adaptive equipment can also decrease fall risks, which we'll go into a little further later. Making sure that our, providers are reviewing medications to ensure that those medications aren't causing an increased risk of falls, and ensuring that our loved ones have appropriate supervision if they need the supervision at home. So let's understand transfers a bit. So basically, transfers is the safe movement of a person from one surface to another, such as a bed to a wheelchair or bed to a regular chair. It could be a chair to a toilet, a wheelchair to car. It could be walking. So basically, getting from one point to another. There are various types of transfers. So as we all know, kind of ambulation, so walking, is one. We could also transfer by doing kind of a sit to stand, meaning you sit, you stand up, and just kind of take a few steps to sit to the next surface. Another type is a stand pivot transfer, in which you stand and just no steps are taken. You just kind of pivot your body over. Press over transfers could be, just kind of, moving your body from one surface to another without even really requiring you to fully stand. Sliding boards can also be an option to help you slide from one surface to another without using your legs at all, as well as some, transfer lifts can also be a type of movement from one point to another. So when you're assisting with transfers or ambulation, one thing to consider is body mechanics. Caregivers really need to make sure that they're utilizing proper body techniques and positioning so that they don't injure themselves in order to help assist their loved ones or patients. So you want to make sure that your feet are positioned shoulder width apart for stability. You want to make sure you bend your knees versus lifting with your back. So kind of in a squat stance, if you will. Making sure you have your loved ones close to you. So the further they are away, the more challenging it is to transfer them. And you want to avoid twisting your back. So making sure you're using your legs to kind of pivot your body. Another technique that isn't listed here is using a gait belt, which is just like a belt that you put around your loved ones so that you can use that kind of as an anchor point. Um, Typically, when we're assisting with our loved ones or patients, we're using kind of their center of gravity, which is typically kind of around the hips. Also, we want to make sure we're assessing for fluctuating levels of fatigue and strength as different, treatments may cause, more weakness on one day versus another. So making sure, the you might have fluctuating levels of supervision required or assistance needed with your loved one. So there's multiple mobility devices, and I'll kind of go through those here today. So we have for walking or ambulation. There are obviously all kinds of canes. There's some that has one point on the end of the stick on the floor, and there's some with, 4 points. There's all various versions of canes, as well as walkers. There's walkers with wheels, without wheels. Rollators are those walkers that have kind of swivel wheels, as well as usually a seat to sit on. And you can also put, items there. Also wheelchairs. So obviously there are power and manual wheelchairs, as well as lightweight versus transport wheelchairs, all different various forms of wheelchairs. As far as toileting devices, um, you can have a bedside commode, so one that just kind of sits beside your bed, and or you can use it over a toilet to kind of raise the toilet seat up. They also have elevated commodes that you can buy at hardware stores that help to basically raise the toilet seat up so that your loved one can get up a little bit more easily versus having to get from a lower surface. There are shower devices such as shower chairs, which are kind of a smaller stool. They also make transfer tub benches, which there's 2 feet kind of in the tub, 2 feet out, so that your loved one doesn't have to kind of step over that tub, and they can just kind of sit and slide over. There are shower wheelchairs, which is again, it's much more rare to see these. But it's basically a wheelchair that someone's sitting on in the wheelchair, and you just roll them in if you have a, zero threshold shower. Also, there are transfer lifts, and there are, manual or electric lifts available. As far as adaptive devices for ADLs or activities of daily living, I've listed just a few here. So reachers are those, kind of grabbing sticks, if you will, so that, if something's dropped on the floor, your loved one can pick it up first with the reacher versus reaching down to get it, and again, increasing their risk of falling. There are also sock aids that help you put your sock on. So if you can't reach your feet, the sock aid will help you put the sock on, as well as a foot funnel and or a shoe horn, which help to put your shoes on. There's a device called a button aid that helps with kind of being able to button and doing some clothing fasteners, as well as elastic shoelaces, which basically creates your shoe to make it a slip-on shoe. There's all different kinds of modified fasteners, using Velcro versus buttons, or using kind of magnet jewelry versus having to use clasps. There are long-handled sponges or loofahs that help to kind of reach with bathing tasks. There's a rocker knife that helps to kind of cut up food with just one hand. And then just some practical things around the kitchen, like an electric can opener, a food processor, and large handles can also help with if someone has decreased dexterity, it helps with use of utensils that way. And there's a lot of smart home devices these days, as well as, using lighting, as we talked about earlier, to help decrease fall risks. So some other things to consider is energy conservation or work simplification for your loved one. So energy conservation is basically an intentional planning and modification of activities to reduce fatigue and to improve daily function. And basically its principles are to prioritize tasks, plan out tasks, pace tasks, and make sure that we're in a good position for tasks. So some examples of some energy conservation techniques are as below. So specifically for self-care, just thinking about sitting to get dressed versus standing, planning out your clothes, laying it out ahead of time, using adaptive tools like some of the tools we talked about earlier, such as a reacher, a sock aid, or a foot funnel. Some things to think about in home management tasks are to kind of spread out tasks over time so that you don't have everything to do in one day. Kind of spread it out over a period of time, making sure that all the items that you need are, within reaching distance. So making sure you're not putting commonly used objects way up high or way down low, making sure it's kind of in that mid-level. And then, using robotic devices as needed, such as like there's lots of robotic vacuums, for instance, kind of using some tools around the kitchen that will help to decrease fatigue levels. And then we have meal preparation. Again, so sit while chopping or mixing, and perhaps use pre-cut or frozen foods and freezing leftovers so that you have less kind of multiple times that you have to cook. As far as community mobility, you want to use aids when appropriate, and then plan in your errands strategically, and perhaps, making sure that you're planning and combining trips to conserve energy. Some other practical tips are to break larger projects into smaller steps, the use of timers to schedule rests, to prioritize enjoyable leisure activities and making sure that you're not just doing what's needed, but also what's enjoyable and fun, to balance productivity with relaxation, and to track your fatigue with a diary. To have our examples and some videos, here are some videos that's on the LCI YouTube channel that Joanna Langford recorded approximately 2 to 3 years ago. I just didn't want to recreate the wheel, but it goes through kind of each of the so kind of basic transfer techniques, ways to kind of get people out of bed, and then a review of assistive devices as well as car transfers and techniques utilizing that. So feel free to utilize these links, and it is helpful and available to you. Otherwise, if you have any further questions or concerns, or you want to request a therapy consult, please contact your physician for a referral, or you can certainly call our LCI therapy office at 980-442-7895. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that this has provided you with some tips and tricks to help your loved one as they go through the cancer continuum. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. For more information, visit us online, send us an email, or give us a call. Don't forget to click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when new videos are released. And most of all, be well.